Hello everybody, how are you? Time for another Denver video. And by the way, thank you so much for the feedback. These Denver videos are proving to be some of the most popular of any community spotlight video series I've done so far. And I think the reason is because Denver appeals to so many people's imagination that we all find it appealing to go to a clear, crisp, affordable mountain getaway. And Denver is the gateway to that. And so I think that's why it appeals to so many people. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the demographics. Exactly who are Denverites. And who are Denverites? So let's go through it. So this is mostly information from the 2010 census, among other resources, but that is the main one. So in the most recent information available, 53% of the people in Denver are former rural Coloradans that worked in agricultural settings, worked on farms, worked in rural communities, providing services to the farming community, to the ranching people of the High Plains east of the mountains in Colorado. And the reason they moved from that environment to Colorado was the main reason that was given when they take polls of former rural people that have moved to the big city of Denver, is that they felt that they were going to have better luck, building a career that could last with the changes in the agricultural business, but also they wanted... The feeling was that they would be able to live a life that had culture from the current day rather than 1957. And one person said, well, I was out there on the High Plains, and the problem that I had is that they were showing movies down to the theater downtown from 1958. And I came up to Denver because I wanted to see them Star Wars. See, and so that was one person responding to why they moved to the big city. So in other words, a large population of former rural people. But that is why when you hear reports of cattle, sometimes Denver still is, next to large cattle populations and rural, it's not exactly all highways and byways, right? So there are reports at times of cattle roaming through the city, and that's why so many of the residents don't hesitate to jump on the back of a raging bison because they know how to handle it. And so many potential bad accidents have been avoided because the former rural population that have moved to Denver were able to act quickly, jump on a bison, grab the horns, and ride it until it calmed down. They just talk to it. They know what to say. So that's an important reason why the lifestyle is so safe in Denver. Now, one of the biggest populations, 23%, are Canadians coming down from Canada. And the reason that they like Denver is it reminds them a little bit of home, but is so much warmer. Because the problem is, once you get over the Canadian border, once you've crossed into Canada, the temperature drops by 40, 50 degrees. And it's to the point where if you're a retiree, it's hard to get up the motivation to get out of bed at any age, but certainly when you're older, you don't want to have to fight that cold all the time. And so they've known some older Canadians just to put on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 layers and just keep them on all winter. And in many parts of Canada, the winter is 11 and a half months. So what Denver affords them is, let's call it a Canadian lifestyle. It's outdoors. It's cold-ish, but it isn't to 150 below like it is in Edmonton and Calgary and some of the parts of British Columbia, Winnipeg, and in all of Saskatchewan. So that's why so many Canadians move down. Plus, they feel an affinity for the mountains. And so, of course, with Denver, the mountains are right there. So Canadians are a useful part of the population. In other words, they provide a lot of value for Denver as a city. Because remember, in times of crisis, you just react. You don't really think. And Canadians are very good at being able to pull people out of snowbanks, being able to, their snowshoe skills are unparalleled. They can skin a deer. They know how to get buffalo out of people's yards. So because they grew up there on the plains and mountains and hills of that tundra up there, they're really good at it. Plus, let's be honest, they have a better idea of what makes a good beer because they have a higher alcoholic content up in Canada. And they allow people to start drinking beer at 10 years old in the Western Canadian states anyway. So they're more familiar, they have a higher expertise. And so a lot of times people will consult with local Canadians in taste testing when they're trying to open up a new brewery, a new tasting room, a new microbrewery, or any kind of new local beer brand, be it an IPA or a wheat or whatever it is. So that's how Canada adds value to the population. The next population, 21%, are Californians. Now, Californians are more recent. They have some OG Californians that came in like the 70s and 80s, but a lot of that 21%, maybe 15%, maybe if you looked at it on a total percent, 15% of Denverites are recent Californians. And the reason that is because in Los Angeles, for example, a starter home is $1 million. And that ain't no joke. So that is the real thing, man. People go, whoa. And so a good quote that I remember is some friends of mine said, we left LA to go to Colorado to get the picket fence. In other words, they wanted a house where there's room for a new family to grow without having to move every 2 years. And that is Denver. That is Colorado. That ain't from around here. So now, what value do Californians bring? Well, it's, again, an outdoor lifestyle in Denver, of course, and Californians bring a naturalness that helps complement that. So you see an increase in yoga studios. You see an increase in vegan options. You see an increase in, you might call them transcendental meditation resources. You see an increase, just the use of the access to recreational marijuana increases. In other words, marijuana use in Denver went up, probably doubled when Californians started to show up, because that's how they coped with the incredibly high housing prices when they were in the Sunshine State, or whatever they call California. So they bring a certain, let's call it je ne sais quoi, a certain approach to life, a certain naturalness. They know how to mix. Your average Californian arriving in Denver knows how to mix wild berries with granola, add some cream, and maybe a little bit of milk, and that milk is usually almond milk. It's not milk from a cow. And so they know how to make a very good light lunch of granola, spring greens, perhaps, some kind of let's call it a sriracha in there to give it a little kick. But everything is vegan, everything is natural, and that's a lot of value that they can bring to the community, because the average person in Denver has never had a salad. And I'm talking about the people that grew up there. They didn't have salad because they eliminated salad from any menu option in the city, just because it wasn't any big oversight from the city itself, is that no one was ordering it. Nobody knew what it was. I can remember hearing stories of people driving through Denver in the 1980s and hearing kids say, "Mom, what is this salad? What is a salad?" And the mother saying, "I'm sorry, child, I don't know. I have no idea what that is." And the kid who's just starting to learn to read will say, "Well, it says it's got lettuce, tomato. They got some green. They got some paprika on there, croutons, and some other vegetables." And the mother's like, I have no idea what any of those things are that you're talking about." So it just, because it's a Western capital, the Wild West was built on beef. They drove cattle through that country for decades and helped build the West. So it's got a cowboy past, a beef past, and it's just the natural state of things. So what Californians are able to bring is that more of a, let's just call it lean lifestyle. The problem with Californians is because so many of them are vegan, they can barely lift anything. I mean, if you need anything moved in your home, do not hire a California or former California-based moving company. Because what you'll find is they'll have to subcontract with locals to get anything done. Because the locals are eating meat, but those Californians, they haven't eaten meat since 1977. And that's why they won't be able to lift your piano, lift your dining room table. So that's the California demographic. And then the final demographic that is found in Denver, or at least large enough to talk about. Of course, there's a smattering of people from Prince Edward Island. You got some English blokes coming over with their families. You've got a few Irish, making up the demographics. You've got a few French rolling around that like the mountain lifestyle. But I would say that the next smallest group are people from the northwest of the United States that had to get out of there. Much like the reasons the Canadians like to hightail it, but in the Pacific Northwest, it wasn't the cold; it was the unbelievable taxes that they were starting to experience in places like Portland, like Seattle, like those metropolises of the Pacific Northwest. And the reason that the taxes have gone up is that the same influx of the Californians into Denver were also going into those cities. And both Seattle and Portland voted to build walls around their city limits. But they didn't have the funds to do it. So they voted tax increases in order to build the wall. Now there's a lot of people that said, "Down with the wall, no wall." There's a lot of protesters, but it turned out that those were shadow California groups that wanted to make sure that those options remained open for them to leave northwest LA, to leave Beverly Hills and come up there to Boise, to Coeur d'Alene, to Seattle, to Portland, and infiltrate those cities. So because of the huge tax increases to build the wall, it had, and just like in nature always looks for a balance. Because of the tax increases, then you had people leaving Seattle, leaving Portland, leaving Coeur d'Alene to come to Denver. And that makes up a sizable part of the population now in the Mile High City. So it's interesting how things tend to balance, how nature seeks a level, seeks level, and the chain effect began. Well, guys, that's a quick overview about the demographics of Denver. We're going to have so many more videos on this great city that everybody loves. I've never heard anybody say, oh, that Denver, it's so overrated. I've never heard it. So we're going to be talking about the economy, the culture, government, media, all kinds of stuff. The parks that you can go to, the popular culture in the area, including bands and music, and it's going to be so much fun. It's all week here at joeditzel.com. You got a comment? Got a question? Got a suggestion? You hate it? Love it? Talk to me, baby. Get on the tweeter. You can see Joe Ditzel on the tweeter machine, and I'm also right here, of course, on the YouTuber. Talk to me, talk to me.